Do you love true crime but are looking for something different?
It sounds like a sitcom.
It does.
The Benders.
The kind of assholes you should probably leave them alone.
Do you like learning about cases so off the wall they can't possibly be true?
Her wig is enormous, but it is lifted off her head by a monkey.
Do you love history but want to hear about what they didn't teach you in school? It's just got a almost where you hang your horns sign.
Do you like laughing awkwardly about cases that are bizarre and a little strange?
They'd be able to wield so many knives with all of their little arms.
Then we have the podcast for you. Join me, Lindsay.
And me, Madison, for Ye Old Crime,
where we discuss the funny, strange, and obscure crimes of yesteryear.
Listen every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts.
And we'll see you next time with another tale
as old as crime.
What's up, weirdos?
Hey, yo.
Me? Shit. I got me a little something rolled. The lights are low, and we're about to chop it up with Abigail on the Manic, Pixie, Weirdo podcast.
Okay.
A safe space for weirdos of all shapes, sizes, colors, and creeds to relax and speak their piece. So grab your glass of wine and grass the chief as I get off the mic so the main weirdo can speak. Peace.
Peace, God.
What is up, weirdos? You're listening to the Manic Pixie Weirdo. I'm Abigail, your host, and this is the podcast where we talk about all the different kinds of relationships that we have in our lives. But first, let's break for an ad. And we're back. And this week, we are talking with JD. Say hi and tell everybody a little bit about yourselves.
Hey, glad to be here. I am JD. Father, husband, before any of the other things that'll come after this as far as what I do. But I'm the host and the founder of Dark Days, Bright Nights. Easily put, it's a safe place and an environment for those who just want to discuss their mental illness struggles. And it's kind of an all-in-one encompassing from the podcast to things you can talk to me about, questions you might have that just seem like they come with a lot of jargon, every answer you want to get. All in one happy space, darkdaysbrightnights.org. But happy to be here, happy to chat, and happy to always have a conversation. It's one of my favorite things to do.
I'm really excited. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to talk to you. And this week we're talking about our relationship with mental health, just like in general, just all the things that like we feel encompass like our mental health and things of that nature. So I guess the first question that I have for you is just the most obvious question. What is your relationship with your mental health? Like, what was your journey that like it took you on? Did it take you on a journey?
Yeah. I think everybody, right, has a story, and that's one of my favorite things. It's what I try and bring out of people is what their story is. And not necessarily in a way of like, listen, you've got to tell me what's going on. It's a level of comfortability. It's a level of, what you want to share. Because I think we always get mixed up in, people, there's two different versions of a story, right? There's what people want to hear and there's what people need to hear. And most of the time, the things that people want to hear is probably not necessary for the story as a whole. Usually gets wrapped in some kind of negativity or drama or just gossip, and that's not necessarily important to the story. So I always like to focus on what people feel they need to share, because if you really dig down deep with that, it's the part that's necessary as far as your healing, as far as getting something off of your chest and your shoulders. And that's something that I think I've always, I'm 41 now, and I don't know if I ever like look back on it until I started doing all this, but I can say I'm probably the more emotional out of everybody in my family. In fact, my wife and I were just having a conversation about it last night about us. And I think we do this at least once a year, about being sentimental. And she's always, not that she's not, but she always worries that she's not like sentimental enough. And we have an 18-month-old, and it's like, well, I do care. And it's like, well, it's not that. We all have different levels of that. And so I joke, but I'm probably more serious than I need to be with it. That I'm the sensei. I'm the one that, and I'm comfortable with it now. Maybe if you had asked me 10 years ago, I'd be like, no, I'm not. I don't want to be. But I'm quite okay with the fact that I'm emotional, in the sense that I'm not afraid to tell you exactly how I feel, whether that's having a confrontation, as far as a discussion and a debate with somebody that maybe have done something that they shouldn't have towards me, my family, whatever the case may be, or telling you that, you know what, like I'm feeling pretty sad right now. My dad the other day, so I said we have an 18-month-old, and he's starting to find his voice and vocabulary. And out of the blue, when he said goodbye to my dad, who we call Poppy, he said, "Bye, Poppy." And I could see my dad cry, and I almost cried with him. And I have no idea why that happened. Um, and I have been that way for a majority of my life, not necessarily with the tears, but I'm aware of other people's emotions, and I'm aware that if you told me that music or that movie was so sad, I wouldn't look at you and go, "What?" Like, it was a cartoon. I would at least understand the fact that that might be something that was emotional to you. So my relationship, as far as my own mental health, has been pretty strong. I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm totally in control of my mental health. I don't think anybody truly is. I think I just have the benefit of knowing that this is the emotion that I'm feeling right now, and you're going to know what that emotion is too. And you just get better at managing that. You get better at not only telling people how you feel, but expressing that, right? As I was younger, and things I've learned just within the past 5, 6 years alone, that I can be, well, I knew I was stubborn. I can be stubborn, but I can be stubborn to the point that I get angry, and not necessarily temper or throwing or yelling and screaming, but enough to make the other people uncomfortable. And I don't know if I recognized that much of it when I was younger, but I knew it was there. So I think I can safely say that I'm proud of the fact that I know what I'm feeling, and I know that I'm growing in the sense that I'm aware of what I need to do with that emotion, whatever it is. Like, does it need to just be like, okay, just hold on to it for a second, that this is not the appropriate time or the appropriate way? Or is it the appropriate time that I could just bawl my eyes out and you get to figure out what's wrong with me? But that's not everybody, and that's not even everybody in my own family. I mean, I could just keep it within the bubble there. That my mom has some pretty strong, emotions. She can be the worrier, and I see why now that I have a kid. But she doesn't necessarily always have that under control, and I've watched it with my brother when I was younger. um that I looked at him and he'd say something to her, and he's 5 years younger than me. I'm like, oh, I know how that's gonna end. Like, I wouldn't have said that. But it's because they have the same personalities, and so you have that. And my dad, same thing. My dad is probably where I get most of those, like, feeling part of it. Not that my mom doesn't, but I see it now. Just like I said, I mean, he was starting to tear up because an 18-month-old pretty much said goodbye to you without prompting, and it was like, oh, which, yeah, right, it touches everybody, but it's like, he's well into his 70, and he you wouldn't expect that from him. He's a guy who grew up in New York City, and he'll tell you all sorts of crazy horror stories, and down to earth, and smoked weed for the most of his, like, teenage and college years, and you just wouldn't expect it. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, you have some pretty crazy feelings too. So I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting dynamic just looking at that. And like I said, I mean, my wife too. My wife is definitely the more realistic of the two of us. She has a different way of showing her emotions. So she's dealt with grief that I haven't, loss in her family, and has a different way of, and I've seen it, at least from my mom, as far as losing her mother. But I didn't watch how my mom dealt with it. I was way younger, and here I was older, with my wife losing her dad, and watch how that's processed. So, it's interesting to see, and it's interesting to watch your own self kind of to grow with it. And then that's kind of where I end up with the work that I do, conversations that I have, the topics that I even choose to talk about. It's really almost selfish in a way, because it's like, okay, I figured this out. How do I help somebody else get to that, at least, point of saying, okay, here's how you're feeling. Not only is that okay, which we've kind of got that covered, like, it's okay not to be okay. It's the next step. that I think that I I would say I have a great relationship with is that okay, this is a terrible, messed up day, and I would just want to go back to bed, or I just want to sit here and do nothing. What do I do with that? So it's kind of where I don't know. It's taken the majority of my life to get there, though. I
Yeah,
just at
what
least
was that like? What was that journey like of like because it's a maturing journey. I
it
think it's a
is.
very emotional maturing journey. Uh but what was that like for you? Like how did you get to that place where you became comfortable with being able to sit in your emotions? Because I totally
Yeah,
agree that like it's okay to not be okay.
yeah,
I generally tag on a little thing at the end of that though and say it's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to stay there.
right. Don't don't
And
don't unpack your bags and live there. Right.
right,
Exactly.
right. And so I just I'm just really curious, like how did you get to that place where you
Yeah.
became okay with not just feeling those emotions, but then taking that next step and trying to decide, okay, how do I get not necessarily get out of it, but move through
Move
it.
past it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have. In fact, I like couple months ago, I was on a show and somebody that was like their first question that they asked me was something along the lines of, here I am like discussing mental illness and I've, basically made it my job. You must have had a traumatic moment to like have that light bulb go off and like, must have been like a terrible time in your life. And I don't really, I mean, I felt bad because I was like, well, no, um,
Yeah, I don't
I've had the
necessarily think that
natural,
you, well, I don't necessarily think that you have to have a traumatic
no,
moment in order for that to occur.
no, I think you have to be knocked on your butt is the best way I think of, and
Mm.
probably how I said it and how I say it a lot in my life. I'm a firm believer in the universe, and that could be that could you could fit in any other person, any other entity, any other thing in there. They all are going to do the same, and that is they're going to knock on your butt in some way, shape, or form. For me, I mean, I think the awareness factor probably was a twofold. Um, both my age, both my, the where I was in life as far as, ready to call something a career, ready to, settle down and be with somebody rather, and I have a great family, dynamic as well. So I had a lot of that kind of stuff going for me anyway, which, can be for better, for worse. For me, I wouldn't say it was worse, but it definitely was a level of comfortability that I wasn't paying attention to everything. So before this life, I was a teacher for almost 10 years. In fact, my wife was to middle school and two different places, two different scenarios, two different sets of parents and students and bureaucratic mess. And on my end of things, it was the place I'd been with for pretty much as long as we lived here in North Carolina. My mom was a teacher there. My brother was a student there. I wasn't when we were younger, just because they didn't have an opening for my age, and I end up being the guinea pig for their middle school program. And then years later, meanwhile, my mom's still there teaching the whole time. I come back and I teach the program that I was a guinea pig for. So been with this place for another, a long time, and that was just a comfortable level, both with teachers and parents and students. And I think I just kind of forgot everything else that came around me. Hard to forget my mom. My mom was there every day when I first started teaching. She was the lead teacher, which was super amazing to work next to your mom and get along. Um, but my life outside of it was, it's well, let's see, I started probably when I was 25, 26, something like that. So not quite young, but not quite old either. It's kind of the age where your brain doesn't, well, I shouldn't say stop developing, but as far as the age of the progress of adolescence and development, it's kind of the age where all that kind of stuff kind of figures out the wiring for, and you're left on your own. And here I am teaching. I'm living on my own at that point, And so years and years later, that comfortability blindsided me as far as the parents that I was interacting with and things that I wanted to be involved with at school. And I forgot, I keep pointing this way because my wife is over sitting on the couch dealing with oncology patients, but I forgot about her. And that's who I was with at the time. And found myself in toxic relationships, and not ones that are a relationship as far as, a romantic relationship, but just, other adults that I thought had my best interest in mind and didn't. So fast forward to the school already falling apart, but kind of in the mode of like, we got to point the finger at somebody else, because it's not our fault. We're the board and we're the parents and we've been here for years when you really haven't. The guy and the other teachers in the school have been here for almost 30 plus, some of them. And my mom was the head of the school at that time because the teacher, or excuse me, the head of school at the time realized that they were messing up, and they were like, well, the ship's sinking. I'm going to get on the raft that's leaving. So my mom had the tough decisions to make. And so she let go of people. She cut budgets. She had to do all these things that she's Mother Teresa. So you ask her to do that, it's like, I'm not that mean of a person. So you had to blame somebody. Can't blame her because down deep in their heart, they knew it was the right thing to do. So who do you blame? Who do you try and accuse and point the finger at? You pointed at her son. So I got knocked on my butt with parents and other teachers that were friends of parents that said, yeah, he's totally been a bad teacher for years. I remember X. I remember this, and none of it. And I kind of got the rug like pulled underneath me because I just didn't know that people could be that way, and it's because I got so comfortable. So the universe slapped me, and my wife knew it the whole time. She knew that this wasn't a good place to be, and no, this is where I want to be. In fact, I didn't move to her because this was the school that I thought I was going to be with forever. And so that moment of being completely put in the dark, realizing that people are venomous, people are terrible, and people are going to look out for themselves sometimes when push comes to shove. And that doesn't mean everybody, but there are people that are like that. And I didn't believe that. I didn't think that people could. Put me in a pretty dark place. It's put me in my probably the darkest moment. And so I, for better for worse, have since that day, and that's been 7 years, I think we're going on now. Keep getting older as I talk. It was a moment that I compare everything else to. I've never had so many fingers pointed at me for things that I would never dream of doing, never, dream of harming, or never dream of making somebody else go through. And I look at that moment, that day. In fact, I keep it on a calendar. That's how much I pay attention to it. That this is when the worst thing that could ever happen to you happened. Does this moment right now that you're worried about, does it compare to that? And nothing else does. And so I kind of just go from that. And I think that's what everybody can do. And it doesn't have to be extreme. It could be the day that you stubbed your toe and you ran around screaming for 4 hours. That was the worst thing that's ever happened. If that's your worst, great, that's yours. It doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to be this, incredibly terrible, dark moment, or at least one that you attach a label to. Like you didn't have to, spend 6 months in jail. You didn't have to, kill somebody. You didn't have to do something extreme in order to feel that darkness. It just had to be dark to you. And there's where the name of everything that I do comes from. This dark days, bright nights, because, and I didn't believe it when my dad said it years before that's he just wanted to go to bed because that was the times that his brain shut off. But when I went through it myself, I realized that's exactly what was happening, that my days were the darkest because that's when everything was coming at me. That was everything was being aware of. And I just wanted to shut down, and I couldn't because I have somebody that believed in me. I have, parents that believed in me. I had people that didn't believe the things that the toxic people in my life were telling them. So I had all this like great warmth and light around me, and I was in a dark. I was in a deep well. So I look at everything at that point and say to myself, does it that bad? And for me, it's not. Maybe there's, I hope not. Maybe there is something eventually that's as equally terrible. But I think if you can find that in your life, it kind of grounds you. Because it's an awareness that bad things do happen, and I think that's what we kind of get wrong when we talk about mental health. That's why if I can help it, if it doesn't fit the conversation, that's why I like to use the word mental illness, because it at least encompasses the fact that this isn't fun. This isn't funny. Not at least all the time. Maybe you can joke about yourself, but it's that, that it's an awareness that got brought to me. So I'm 9 times out of 10 calm as a Hindu cow when I go through most things in life now, because it doesn't. This doesn't mean I don't worry. It doesn't mean I don't stress. But I at least am grounded in the fact that this isn't going to be that bad. And if it is, you know what to do now. Or at least know how to navigate. It doesn't mean it's not, it's not going to be there. But, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be something that's going to be, when my parents pass away, which is never going to happen because they're immortal. It's going to be terrible. And I know it. And I have songs already, like, at least for my dad, that just like, that struck me. And I'm like, I'm going to say this at his eulogy. And that's weird to say, but it's because it's like, I know that's going to be bad for me. And I know somewhere in my head, the song in this case looked at you and said, listen, this is how it's going to feel. So the fact that you're crying right now at James Blunt, this is going to get worse, buddy. So it's going to be worse than that day. But now I know that. And before I didn't. Before, not that I was necessarily coasting along that like there's nothing bad, I'm untouchable. I'm not that egocentric. I'm just not. I wasn't aware of the different types of attention. I guess that is the best way to put it. Right? We have 2 different forms. There's positive attention and there's negative attention. And that negative attention a lot of times does a great job of being masked at being positive. It doesn't mean that you have to be cynical through life, but you have to really be conscious of it. And I just wasn't. I thought, like, this is what's next. How can I change the world as a teacher? And speak at this conference, do this, start this program, watch me, like I'm the prodigal son returned because I came back to teach this program. And I never carried it that way. But in my head, that's what was going on. And it took the people around me to recognize that. And God bless that they did, because I know for a fact that my wife was like one step away of just saying, forget it. And I feel like if that did, the cliche saying is true. Like, I mean, she saved me. And she saved me not because she told me like, wake up. She saved me because she gave me a chance with it. So
No, no, I totally get it. I think you touched on a couple of things that like, are really good, like the awareness and being
mhm.
able to have that awareness. Um, and that comparing of pain that
Yeah,
people do. And that is something that has always just like never sat well with me. The
yeah,
comparing of pain, whether it be physical, emotional, spiritual, mental,
yeah,
any of those categories. And I think that, and what I mean by comparing of pain is that like, so I've been through more in my life than you have,
yeah.
which makes your pain less than mine.
Right.
That kind of comparing. I don't
Yeah,
mean comparing in the sense that you're talking about, where you were talking about like, well, now I have something to compare this new pain
right.
to. And I think that that's more of like what you were saying is an awareness, and
Exactly.
it's more of a tangential kind of comparison. And I think that's okay because
Yeah,
it gives you
absolutely.
a perspective, and it can give you some sort of concrete foundation where you can go, okay, so I've been in a place like this before.
Absolutely.
What did I do last time that didn't, that either A worked, B didn't work, or C we just didn't try?
Yeah.
Or number 4, the fourth option being, um what did we do, uh what did we do kind of like half-heartedly,
Yeah.
and not really like give our full.
Yeah.
But like that's okay. But the comparing of pain on like to other people, I
Yeah.
think is a big problem that I see a lot in the
It
world
is.
today. How do you feel about that? And
Yeah.
am I wrong? Like,
No, absolutely
okay.
not. The example I like to give people with that is and unfortunately my brother is one of those, so and he knows that I like to use him for this one. If you look at two different scenarios of to-do lists, right? You and I might have the exact same list that we need to make of things to do today. There are people that will put, if you ask them, what do you have to do today? And they're envisioning that list that's in their head. There are people that will include things like doing the laundry or doing the dishes. And and there are people that will not include that because to them, that's just happening. That's always going to happen. It's not necessarily to say this is part of my routine. So that when that kind of person, when you ask them, what do you want to do today? Do you have time to go have coffee? Well, yeah. I mean, I just have a call at 12. I just have to do something real quick as far as an email. But yeah, they still have dishes to do. They still had laundry to do. They didn't tell you that. Whereas somebody else answering the same question will still tell you they had a call at 12. They have emails to answer. They have something quick that they have to type up. And they'll also include the fact that, well, I mean, I got to cook dinner. I wanted to fold laundry. I needed to put away the dishes. They'll include all those things as well. And to the person that doesn't include those, so as I said, I'm not one that is like my brother is. You look at that
I
person and
am.
go, right. You look at that person and go, what? Like, what do you mean you can't make time for me? Like, I'm just talking about like 30 minutes to sit. But to that person, that's it almost is like that's like it causes them anxiety that they have all this stuff. Yes, they were able to build that routine to some degree, but to them, they can't see that there's that 30-minute block that they get to breathe. They don't know how to breathe. Some people that becomes a problem. Some people that is their routine, that is their lifestyle. And so it's the same thing when you look at people's pain or people's struggles or people's lives, right? I mean, that's why you have to be careful when you ask somebody, what their story is. You just want to hear it. You don't want to look for this certain moment, that certain thing that you can say something to, or the certain thing that's going to make you go, whoa. Because it may not be there, but to that person, that was so tough to say. I mean, I know my story. I'm comfortable with my story. I'm comfortable with every aspect of my story. I wasn't always, but I am now. But even still, um, I don't necessarily love to tell everybody because I know that not everybody needs to hear it. They may want to hear it. So you have to be careful with that. When it comes to how you hear people and what they're going through. Um, Social media is a great tool for that, and it's also a great downfall for it too. Is that we're so quick to look at it and go, what? Like, how's that? That's not a bad thing. Like, there's no way that you could feel that bad about it. And you don't know that because there's so much that goes on in our own minds that is unique to each other. And that's great. That's beautiful. But we don't necessarily look at it that way. We look at the fact that, like, no, that person's an idiot. Like, why are you stressing about that? Well, they are because they don't, they see that as doing laundry, right? They see that as having to mow the lawn, like a task that should happen for everybody. Unless you live in Manhattan, maybe you don't have to mow the lawn, but you can eliminate some things, but there's things that piles up for people, and you have to understand that some people, this is whatever that is, that's hard for them. And it may be hard for them because they've this is the first time they're experiencing it. It may be hard for them versus you because yes, they experienced it, but no one really helped them navigate it entirely. In fact, if you ask them, if they really sat down and asked themselves, they go, well, actually, I'm still kind of upset about that, or that still hurts, or whatever feeling they're going with. So I'm always careful about that with people because you're right. You're absolutely spot on that we do that far too often. It's a whole nother level of judgment, I feel like. That doesn't necessarily come out in the sense that, like, in the true form of judgment that, oh man, like,
What is up, you guys? I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our sponsor for this episode, Newsly. It's an audio app for iOS and Android where they basically take articles from all over the world and all the trending topics that are on the web at any given moment, and it reads them to you in like a natural voice, like a human being would. It's basically the first time in the history of the internet where the entire web becomes listenable. It's really cool, you guys. They have all different kinds of articles from all different kinds of topics so that you can like stop scrolling and start listening, which I really love. You can follow all the, any topic, all the topics, whatever topic you want to talk about or listen about, from sports, science, Bitcoin, even the Kardashians, like everybody. They have all the latest articles and it reads them to you. So it's super easy. They also have podcasts, which is why I'm talking to you guys about it, because our podcast, along with podcasts from over 50 other countries, are on the app. So that's really, really cool. You can start listening there as well. You can download and use Newsly for free right now at www.newsly.me, or you can use this link in the description, and when you use the promo code P1X1EP0DCAST, that will give you a free month of premium subscription to Newsly. So go check it out, you guys. And thank you so much to Newsly for sponsoring this episode.
Lower form that we just kind of like wash off. They're like, that happens. But it's probably, if you ask me, it's probably equal to those kind of judgments, if not worse sometimes, because they tend to go hand in hand.
Well, yeah, and because it's almost to a certain extent so individually tailored.
Yeah.
That's kind of what makes it sorry. Sorry. Dogs. But it's what makes it so individually tailored to each individual that I find slightly annoying and aggravating about it, is because like there is almost this form of maliciousness because it's so individually tailored that judgment seems almost worse. So what, like, and you don't have to tell us if you don't want to, but because we're just here to listen. But what did you ever like go to a doctor and like get diagnosed with anything? Was it just something that like you just sort of recognized in yourself that like I am not okay? How did you get to a place where you were like, oh, this is like reminiscent of like depression or anxiety or whatever it is? Like what was that process?
No, I didn't, and it's not because I don't believe in it. I absolutely believe that we could probably all use it if we're being honest. Maybe not for as long as as some people might need that conversation. I think it just comes down to what kind of support system you have, and who's listening. And I think that's I don't know where that conversation ever happened with my parents, for starters, but we've always been great communicators, and not in the sense that like, listen, like, what's going on? Like, it was never like a sit down. It just always felt comfortable that here, like, here's what happened today, or, and I don't know if I've ever envisioned that, as far as like, I can't recall a memory of like, my parents sitting there and talking with each other, about things like, but I know that they did, and I don't know how to explain that. I could just feel it like within them that they talk a lot, and they know a lot of what's going on. And my wife and I are the same way. I mean, and I think probably to some degree, and just gotten better and better at it, over the course of, well, here we are, 4 years about to be, this week. But I mean, we've known each other for 10, and we've always shared whatever was going on. Sometimes it took a little bit to finally get it, and you knew that person needed to say something. So I think that it's probably just a mixture of that for me. It was never I need to go talk to somebody. I know that my mom certainly told me that I probably should, and my stubbornness was still there when she said it, that no, mom, I'll be fine. Like, she knew that it sucked. She felt terrible. She blamed herself. Maybe still does to some degree, but she'll be the first. If I have a thought that pops back into my head, from 7 years ago, she'll look at me and be like, or not look at me, it's through the phone usually, but the text message will be like, you need to knock it off. I think it's over. It's gone. And you're a better person now. And so it's, we've moved past the conversation. And so she's probably, to some degree still holds it like I do, but she's the person telling you at the same time, like, where you've moved past, you've successfully navigated those emotions. So, and I know I'm fortunate with that. I know that everybody has that kind of system in place, whether that's parents or friendships or whoever you're in a relationship with. I know that's not always the case. And it was probably, I don't know, several years later before I like look back and go, well, yeah, like, and it's a good example. And I don't know, I've never asked anybody around me, but to me, I think I probably acted almost the same. Doesn't mean that was like what was going on in my head was the same, but um, it didn't outwardly show itself, and that to me is always important to recognize that it's not always going to come out that yeah, he's having a tough go. Um, so I mean, I look back on it now and can tell you that it was certainly some mild form of depression. And doing the things that I do every day, I mean, it's just me. I'm in charge of every bit of this, so I unfortunately kind of signed myself up for more of it. But you kind of learn that my days may be grayer than yours, but the days that the rainbow does shine are going to be far brighter than most people's. So you kind of just learn the same phrase there, and it's and put it into your own life that okay, this is that moment. What do you do with that? What did you do with that? And I think the key, and that's why therapy works for people. It's why doing something like that works. It's why medications should come with a label that this is going to help you, settle down a little bit and talk more. And it doesn't. Therapy kind of says that as well, but the best places that will sit there and be your therapist have that phrase in there that they recognize that you just need to talk. And that's I'm going to use a word that I pride myself on in the most softest form. I recognize in myself and turn that into what I do that people just need to talk. And that doesn't mean that's going to fix it, but it hopefully gets you to the point. And that's what I try and do with the clients that I work with is I'm not an expert. I don't have a degree well, I have a degree in psychology. That's a lie. I'm not a therapist though. I'm not an expert. And I'll be the first to admit that. And, I think that's where a lot of us kind of like lose it when it comes to interacting with people, that we have to fix it. It's just a innate human nature, but we want to fix, we want to be the solution. We want to tell you that, hey, I ate a kale smoothie, every hour on the hour, and I don't feel depressed anymore. You should try it. No, you could tell somebody that's what you did, but I think that's what I enjoy the most, that I don't get off on walking away and saying, yep, cured that guy. I enjoy the fact that I just made them go, damn, that did suck. And I didn't even realize that was a bad moment. I need to talk to somebody. I enjoy that way more. And that should be everybody until you get to that expert that goes, yeah, my job title says fixer at the end of it. But they earned that. Not all of us did. That's a hard pill to swallow. It's one of those horse vitamin pills to swallow.
Oh yeah, well that goes back to what you were talking about in the beginning about like the difference between a want and a need.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. That's something that I had to really come to terms with and figure out what those first of all what those words meant to me,
Hmm.
and then sort of not just so taking it beyond defining it, but also like coming up with a list of things that I was like, okay, so
Yeah.
this is what I need, and
Yeah.
this is what I want.
Yeah.
Or this is what I need to hear when I'm
Yeah.
in this situation. This is or this and knowing the difference between what I want to hear and what I need
Hmm.
to hear. Um, how did you do you have like a definition for those, or did you just sort of like learn through various and sundry methods that was sort of that there was even a difference?
I mean, so that idea, that philosophy actually came from somebody that was a head of the school that I taught at, and long before, probably when I started. It was just, and I don't even know where the context came from. It wasn't. I think she was giving a speech, just like to like a PTA meeting or something like that. It wasn't directed. Wasn't like, the two of us sitting in a room. But it hit me in just a very general sense. But looking back, I know what she was saying now, or why she was saying it, and it has so much of a relevance to a lot of the things that we do. The unfortunate side of it is that a lot of times we hear that and go, well, that means that I'm not sharing my emotions. I'm not telling people how I feel, and you are. You're just not spilling everything, because not everybody needs to hear all that. You have to be comfortable with whatever you need to share, whatever you want to tell people, whatever version of your story. But if even in your own head, you're retelling the story, and you're, I don't know, I don't want to say lying about it, but like making it not as severe of a
Amending it.
moment, yeah, then there's something wrong with that part. And you either need to say it out loud, write it down so you can see it and go, no, I'm not holding myself accountable to that. And I think that's what it comes down to, that whatever version, whatever you're willing to tell somebody, whatever part of your story you're willing to share, that you're not sharing it because you're not holding yourself accountable. You're just not sharing because they don't need to know. But hopefully you're telling somebody. I don't, and I've never been that. I'm obviously, I don't mind talking, blessing and a curse, but even then I don't tell everybody. I don't share everything. My wife probably would beg to differ, because I'll tell you every detail just to get to the story. In fact, there's been many conversations over dinner growing up that my dad would just look at me and go, is there a point to this? I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But as I was driving, though, there was a burning bush. But I'll get to the rest of the story. You got to see this burning bush, though. But then you realize that, like, okay, that was important to me. I'm going to tell you in my head that, like, that definitely was there. If I turn this into a novel, I'll tell you about it. But you didn't need to get to that so we could have a dialogue, so I could feel better about telling you what happened in my day or how I'm feeling. And that's what you have to recognize, that just because you're not sharing something because it's just somebody that wants to know that for their own sake, their own gossip, their own drama, their own whatever. Just because you're not saying it doesn't mean that you're holding back. You're holding back if you're not holding yourself accountable to what you're saying, or
Right.
what you're saying out loud. That if in your head you're kind of like, okay, well, I didn't tell them all the details, but I didn't tell them the details just because it's not necessarily the story. They just need to know this part because that's relevant to the understanding whatever question you just asked or whatever topic we're discussing. The rest of it may still get told at a different time, maybe the different question, maybe a different version of, not a different version, but a different scenario. But nonetheless, like, you should at least be able to say, like, "Nope, that's what happened. That's what I did. That's where I was wrong. That's where the mistake was. That's where I was happy. Whatever the case is, that you're at least comfortable with whatever it is." And I think
I
that's what
think
I'm.
that.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, no. I was just gonna say. I mean, I think that's at least what I can say that I value, with the relationships that I have, is that the people that are directly in my life that I interact with on a daily basis, there is nothing that they don't know. And I think that's important. I hate when I hear, like, well, you don't have to tell your wife everything, or you don't have to tell your significant other everything. No, she doesn't need to know that I didn't go to the bathroom necessarily today. She'd probably find that out too. But no, I mean, I think you have to, because what happens is the pattern starts to come into play, and now you're not telling them anything, and that's when you start getting in trouble. That's when it starts looking like you're holding something back, or you're coming home and you're like, hi honey, yeah, good day, yeah, it's good, what's for dinner? And then then you start shutting up because you've gotten yourself so used to not saying anything. Ours is probably an extreme example. I'd be happy if somebody wanted to follow us around like a Kardashian for a day. It's quite entertaining because we've kind of just come to used to like asking obscure questions that make you think. But they're fun. Sometimes it's just, as far as like what restaurants or what places will you tell somebody to visit. We moved from Charlotte, North Carolina to here 4 years ago. Here's Durham, North Carolina. So not too far, but I mean, I'm 41. I spent 30 years almost of my life in there, and 10 years with her. And so I asked, like, if you had to go back for just 2 nights, you had 3 sets of meals that you had, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, where would you go? We sat there for like 30 minutes, like talking about it. And then that question in turn got sent to my brother and my mom. And my brother was like, easy. He gave me 1. I'm like, no, dude, 3 each day. So you realize that not everybody wants to talk about that question. You thought it would, but and so that's an extreme sensitive that I'll ask anything and everything just to make you think. But, it could be just as something simple. We end every vacation, they're vacations now with a toddler. We end every trip at some point, whether that's on the drive home, whether it's, when you get home, you're laying in bed. What was your favorite part about the trip? And, we know by now that you can't be like, well, I just like being with my family. You don't get to say that. You have to, well, I liked the fact that, we went here and, our son Daniel's his name, Daniel smiled when this happened. Or if it was just the 2 of us, it was like, we got to go here. And it was just quiet and peaceful while we were like, staring up at the stars with the drink. It was a very specific moment. You get to that and you lose that though, if you start with a framework of, well, you don't have to tell everybody everything. No, you don't. But you should probably tell them the important stuff.
I think that goes to communication, though. That's
Does.
all about communication. And I don't know if we as human beings are effective communicators.
We're not.
Just like on a very like species
Not anymore,
level.
at least.
Yeah, like on a species level, I don't
Yep.
know if we are effective communicators
Mm-mm.
on a whole. And so, but yeah, my husband and I, we have a very similar kind of relationship where we will sit there and just ask each other like really
Whatever.
random questions or like
Yeah.
talk about stuff that's super random that we know for a fact nobody else cares
sparks.
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
All the things. And but I do think that communication is, at least for me, it's almost, if not just as important as like trust is
Yeah.
in a relationship. And and to be perfectly frank, it's probably a little bit above trust for me because without
Sure.
communication, you can't start to build that
You
trust.
can't. Yeah.
And especially when it comes to like mental health and
Yeah.
your, what's going on in your brain because it's so, and emotionally too, because
Yeah.
it's not physical. You can't see it.
Can't
It
see it.
doesn't, it's not in your face all the time.
Yeah.
I think it's very important for communication to be a big key part of it. Do you ever have, because I'm incredibly stubborn as well, especially when it comes to like mental health stuff. I mean, it's bad. And stubborn in both directions, stubborn in like a positive way where I'm
Mhm.
like, no, I'm going to get this done. I had a goal, like I'm going to get
Yeah.
this done. But also stubborn in like a negative way where it's like, no, I'm right, you're wrong, blah, 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 all the things.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that stubbornness with the communication?
I mean, I'm I'm comfortable with the fact that I don't wear the pants. I don't have pants most days. Um, that was probably a hard pill to sign. It's not that extreme. I'm hoping that she can hear eventually when I walk out. Be like, that's not right. But no, I mean, in the just the honest part of that though is the fact that I mean I want to be right. She wants to be right.
Everybody does.
Yeah. She wants to be right. She'll tell you that she'll stubborn, but from like I would probably venture like within the first year of our existence of knowing each other, she's used the phrase and she's uses it to this day that she will not argue with you unless she knows that she's right. And so I've kind of just, I was like, okay, I don't know what the hell this girl's saying. But you're amazing. I'm going to stick around. What I've come to realize years later, though, is that's my signal that if, and she doesn't say that necessarily now, you can hear it, that you're like, all right, you need to shut up. Like, as much as you think that you're right, and you may still be, probably not. That's your cue that this needs to, you gotta knock it off. We're both stubborn to some degrees. And I don't know. I mean, I wish that I could say that, oh, it's just because I've gotten older, and I think it's that. I think it's just going through life. I mean, you could go through life as an 8-year-old and have the worst experiences and see some stuff, or be a part of stuff that by the time you're 15, you've kind of got a different, cue points of things. But maybe not. I go back to comparing my brother and I. I mean, we're only 5 years apart. And if you laid it out on paper, for the most part, we've had the exact same things happen to us as far as schooling, whether we were at, in public versus private school at this age, when we lived alone. Here's this moment that, knocked us on our butt almost at the same, I mean, not necessarily the same age. I mean, he's my age now ish, when it happened to me, but they happen the same. And here's who he is, and here's who I am. And he's only just now getting to the point that he can communicate and talk. He did not love to talk. He did not love to communicate, but I would be the one that would talk to my mom every night on the way home. I saw her every day at school, and I still wanted, and he just wasn't. He just not that kind of kid. He is now. So I don't know. I don't know what combination it is, but I think you just kind of one day have to stop and look at everything that's going around you as far as what you're doing, and is it making somebody else uncomfortable? Is it causing some kind of headache that doesn't need to happen? I give you just an example that I see with my dad and I. We can both be very obsessive when it comes to something that we want to get done, and it could be something simple that you just wanted to go to the store to get this this item for cleaning that you saw, or this product of some sort that just seems so minor to somebody, but it's something you feel needs to happen now. And he can't. He can't let it go. My mom knows that. There's a time and a different day if you want to ask me about what happened this past Thanksgiving with the duck and donating it to a church. Um, he can't let go of the thing that most people would look at and go, just do it tomorrow, or it can wait. And I'm that same way, and I know that I am. And I, at no point, sit there and go, I don't ever want to be my father. I want to be my father. I just want to be a more aware version of it, because through his experiences, I've learned too. And that's what should happen. I hope that my son looks at the same way, that I love my dad and I want to be like my dad, but I want to be a more enlightened version because he's shared what's going on. And so I can, and I know that because my wife will be the first one to tell you, oh, we're doing silk pillowcases. That's the example. This is the most obscure thing that I never thought I would have this conversation about, but she bought me one for my birthday, and I didn't realize that I had it on my Amazon list or something like that almost like a year ago. And it's got the most elaborate washing process ever, and I hate things like that. Like, I'm like, if this is what it means to live fancy, I don't want it. Like, give me $1 a day, I'll be fine. I don't want to have to wash silk pillowcases this elaborately. But I wanted it to be cleaned. Like, it needed to be cleaned. And she looked at me like, no, I don't want to. I mean, seriously, the card was like this long. She's
That's
like, no,
not a
don't.
pillowcase. That's
It's
not a
amazing.
pillowcase
Let
I've
me
ever heard
let
of.
me stop you there. This is truly like amazing sleeping. If you've never slept on a silk pillowcase, like, I wouldn't say it would change your life, but it's definitely more comfortable sleep. But anyway, um, it needed to be washed, and I read the directions. I was comfortable with the fact that throwing it into the delicate cycle, it came with a little bag just in case. And I asked a few questions that kind of made me nervous, but she looked at me and she's like, well, no, just leave it and we'll hand wash it. I'm like, well, no, I don't want to make you hand wash something. We don't have like a washboard. This isn't the 1600s. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to put this in the soap and water in the sink? I'll wash it. And I'm like, well, can it just go? We could just put it in the on the with the rest of the the bedding stuff. She's like, if you're asking me, I said no, and I laughed because it sounds exactly what she would say to my son. I said no, and I realized like that was my I can't let this go. I want to do this now, and there are many examples like that throughout our time together. I at least know that, yep, this is gonna cause a riff in some way, shape, or form. And I may not have a full blown argument. In fact, I don't think in 7 years now we haven't had one. Because I know that if I take that next step and go, yeah, I need to do this. And there are some moments where she can look at me and go, he needs this done. Like if he doesn't, it's not going to let it go. And again, it can be something super simple from the fact that, at 8 o'clock at night, I'd like to, cut my hair or, something. She can look at you and say, does it happen to have now? And I can immediately look at it and go, no. um, but then my dad can't. And I'm not saying anything wrong with that, but you have to look at people like that, that's a huge part of communication right there, is that we have that awareness. I'm not saying we're the best with it, but at least we understand what's happening with each other. Her example, I'd probably backwards, if I had to point out something, is that she's not great at like telling you that, like, if she doesn't feel good, she's like invincible, and she's got to be a martyr to it. And I on numerous occasions, because it doesn't happen very often that she gets sick, but I'll look at her and be like, listen, Bug, you don't have to be a martyr. Like, if you don't feel good, you don't feel good. And that takes a lot for somebody to say, and not say it in the sense that you're like, you just shut up if you don't feel good. Like, just tell me. There's that version. And there's that, listen, I know that you think that you feel okay. And I'm sure that you can take care of yourself, but is there anything I can do? Or why don't you just rest or whatever? There's that version too. And that's naughty. And I don't have a trick to tell you, like, listen, you just have to keep doing it, and you have to keep listening to what the person say. But I think I'm probably unique in the sense that I'd be the first, man to admit that, like, no, like she's in complete control most of the time, and she knows exactly what to do. And I'm okay. I'll have my moments where I'm in charge and I'm needed, but it's a role thing for sure. We kind of feel like we have to be this person, and you don't. Just because I'm a husband, just because I'm fathered, just because I'm a male, doesn't mean I have to have these exact prescriptions for what I do, and vice versa, right? I mean, or however you define yourself, it doesn't mean you have to have these specific things that you are solely responsible for. And that's hard. I mean, it's hard to admit, and it's hard to also be comfortable with this act and feel strong with it. Like you hear, forget what his name is because I hate football. Cam Newton. I should know that because he's here in Carolina, or was. He made some kind of comment the other day about boss babes or boss whatever, and he said it in the way that was like, he said something along the lines of like, like the woman should know like when to shut up, basically, or be in the kitchen. He didn't apologize a couple days later, but he expanded on it to the sense that, like, that doesn't mean that I was being sexist. It basically meant that, like, he should have like carried on with that sentence and said that everybody has to know kind of where they're supposed to be at that certain time. And there was a part of me that was like, shit, he kind of has it right. He didn't say it right, and he's still an idiot, but that you're right there. You don't
We
have
had to
to be
read
that.
the room.
You right, all right. Had to read the room. There's a part of that underlying that was right, in the sense that no, her place is not to shut up and be in the kitchen, nor is my place to do it. But the part of that that's true is that you have to realize in that moment, like, you're not in charge, and that's okay. You didn't lose your pride. You didn't lose your dignity. Just means that that's not the moment that you're great at, and somebody else is. And you hear people all the time say that she's my queen or he's my king. And like, do you really know what that means? Like, it doesn't mean that like they're, you know, a godsend and then the best thing ever. I mean, you could say that, sure, but what that really should mean is that you both understand your role mentally in the relationship is this, and you know when to step back and be proud of that person. I mean, for years, and I still do it. If I have to talk about her, it doesn't roll off my tongue. Yeah, like my wife is a nurse. No, my wife is an oncology nurse. Before that, she was a teacher. She used to row at UConn. I give her whole life history sometimes because I'm like, yeah, that's amazing. And I have degrees too. I have things that I've done amazing, but no. And that's hard. I don't think that's a maturity thing. I think that's just an awareness of who the people are in your lives, that sometimes you pass the mic and you say to them that, look, like they're having their moment, and that's great. You may be a part of that moment in some way, but you may not. And you can at least rest in the fact that you know that person. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh no. I like that. That's really interesting. Um, okay, so I have one last question for you, and
Shoot.
then I'll let you go. I'm so
That's
sorry.
fine.
I feel like I've kept you forever.
No, it's probably 9 times out of 10 it's my fault. I should have given you my standard warning that I can talk.
No, no. It's okay. It's good. That's why we're here. So my last question for you, and then I'll let you go, is what inspires you, and what do you hope to inspire in others?
I think it just comes down to the fact that, like I mentioned before, I want people to have that light bulb flick on, that aha moment for them, and be somehow a part of that, and not necessarily. I guess I put it this way. What inspires me is to be able to be a part of somebody's aha moment. Um, I don't want to be responsible for it. And I think that's a big switch, that had I started this, and I would have never dreamt that I would be in this position years ago. That probably wouldn't have been the same kind of answer. It would have been some version of needing the light on me. And it was strange to say, because I was, involved with, teaching and building a philosophy of teaching, Montessori philosophy. So it's very life centric, not academic centric. Never came out like that, but that was where I wanted the light. Like, what can I do? I mean, I just only recognize even pieces of that myself, that, I switched everything when it comes to what I do, that my name was on the show, my picture was on the show, and not that and I don't really feel comfortable with that. I hate taking pictures of myself. So it was kind of like, what am I doing this anyway? But I felt like there was a small part of my past self that didn't learn the lesson just yet, that was there. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, this isn't about you. Um, and so, kind of pulled it all away piece by piece, from my picture to the name to the full name, because I rethought it, and I was like, wait a minute, like, you're not doing something that mental illness would be proud of. And so I think that's what inspires me, is to help people kind of see that for themselves, whatever that is, whether that's, this huge dramatic moment. I don't, I don't care. I don't care enough about my own success. And that might be a huge fault somewhere down the line, but I don't, I don't want to be in the light. I just want to fly under the radar, and I want to create a conversation and a community for people. And I think that's inspiring enough, at least for the work that I do as a person. It's the same thing. And whether I had a son, whether I have another kiddo here on the way, it'd be the same thing, that I want them to be proud. Um, and I don't know if I had that version. Maybe I did to some degree for my parents, but I don't know if I know what that meant. Now I do. Now I know what it means. Like, when I want them to be proud of me. Doesn't mean that I, have $1 million in the bank. Doesn't mean that I'm, have all these businesses that I run. It just means that when they look at me, when they mention my name, that they're just thankful that they know me. So there's the person and the business. But either way, the inspiration is the same. That it's just, I can walk away, put my head on the silk pillow at night, and be proud of the fact that I at least was a bridge for somebody to get to where they were going. Um, I wasn't the one necessarily that said, here's the solution. Here's your kale smoothie and a workout plan and a meditation program. You're good. That's all you'll ever need. I'm just not. And that's that's the growth I think I've had just, running this business for the past almost 6 years now, is that it didn't start out that way. It was just okay, and rightfully so, I think, to some degree, right? You want to find something that's going to make you money, but I think I just kind of have always been the person that's aware, and how do I rethink this? How do I do better? That I don't care anymore what everybody else tells you need to do. I just Here's what I want to say, and hopefully you enjoy it.
Oh, I like that. I do. I like that.
It's
Well,
written
thank you
down
so
right
much.
here you can't see it on the wall. I was ready for that question.
Well, thank you so much for coming and talking with us. I'm definitely gonna have
Absolutely.
to
I
get you back
that's
on
just
to talk more about all the
Yeah,
things. But tell everybody one last time where they can find you.
sure. Like I said, I rethought everything and made it simple, so it wasn't like go here and click this and do that. You can find everything that I do, from the podcast to working one-on-one with me, or just if you want to ask me a question, it's all at darkdaysbrightnights.org.
Yay! Okay. Everybody go check his stuff out. I love his stuff. It's really, really good. I enjoyed talking to you so much. And I'm really glad that you agreed to come on.
This is great to be here. This is a refreshing way to at least semi-start my day. It's noon, but feels like a start. I'm still drinking coffee, so I'll count it as a start.
It definitely counts as a start. As always, guys, you can find me on Twitter at NPWeirdo Podcast. You can find me on the TikTok and Instagram, the_main_weirdo1. We do have a Patreon, so if you'd like to support the show monetarily, you can check the Patreon out, the Manic Pixie Weirdo Podcast. If not, then you can always leave us a like, a review, a subscribe, all the things on Apple, Spotify, which really helps the show out. So please go do that. It really, really does help. Thank you so much, JD, for coming and talking with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I hope you had as much fun as I did.
I absolutely did. I sure did.
Great. So, as always, guys, be kind and stay weird. Have a good one. Bye.